Let's take a look at some of the artwork and sake of Yoshitaka Amano. Stay tuned. Whether or not you're familiar with the name Yoshitaka Amano, you are very likely familiar with his artwork from some form of media. And you really can't place Amano into a box and talk about him as someone involved with the anime industry or someone involved with the video game industry or his involvement with the comic industry, because he literally has done something in all of these different industries. In this video, I want to talk about not his entire bibliography or his entire body of works, because his almost 60-year career is just way too populated with so many different items. I couldn't talk about it all in a single video, but I wanted to give kind of a glimpse at some of the most notable pieces of work that he's done throughout his career, leading into the subject of this video, which is actually me trying out the sake which he provided artwork for the labels for. Now, the sake was provided to me by Vault Comics, who had it produced in celebration of their book Bleed Them Dry, a recent comic series that was published, which they had Amano provide cover art for, and Amano provided some more art pieces in relation to the series that I'll be showing up close a few minutes from now. But let's go ahead and dive into Amano's career itself, because it is a very expansive one and a very interesting one at that. Amano started his career back in the late 60s when he was working on an anime adaptation for a popular manga series called Mach Go Go Go, or Speed Racer. This series was the first of many by Tatsuo Yoshida that he would be involved, Amano would be involved working on the anime adaptations of as part of Tatsunoko Productions. He eventually would become a character designer working on a lot of very well-known and popular franchises from Tatsunoko, but the most well-known, the most popular one, especially here in the States, without a doubt, would be Gatchaman, or as it was released here in the US, Battle of the Planets. Battle of the Planets was an extremely influential series that still holds a lot of influence in the States to this day, and it was released in the US in the late 70s, making it one of the earliest anime to actually be localized out here, and it still has a lot of influence in a lot of culture to this day, just as other things like Speed Racer did or still do. However, in the 70s, Amano would then leave Tatsunoko Productions and he would become a freelance artist, and it was around this time that he wound up producing a lot of artwork for different novels and other publications. He became involved directly with a lot of light novel series, some of the most popular ones of which would be the fantasy series called the Guin Saga, and then another one that's pretty well known, at least the title is the Heroic Legend of Arslan, which many people might be more familiar with from the currently running manga adaptation that's being produced by Fullmetal Alchemist creator Hiromu Arakawa. However, the light novel series that I would say Amano is very much most well known for being involved in would be one that's actually still ongoing to this day, and that is Vampire Hunter D. Amano was the character designer as well as the cover artist and provided more artwork for the Vampire Hunter D series, which, as I mentioned, is still ongoing to this day. And the novels in this popular series have been localized in English by Dark Horse, and if you're looking to read these, you can purchase them from Dark Horse, and they are actually re-releasing them now under 3-in-1 omnibus editions, which is really handy. However, the novels were eventually adapted into an anime film of Vampire Hunter D, which did go ahead and use Amano's style and his character designs to influence the style of the film itself. However, I believe that the most recognizable place that most people see his artwork from is actually from the video game industry, where he, from the beginning of the franchise, became involved with the Final Fantasy video games as a character designer, the logo designer, and also providing a lot of additional artwork throughout the production and the promotion of these games. If you're familiar with any artwork from Amano at all, I want to say it very likely is going to be from the Final Fantasy franchise, as like I mentioned, he was involved from the very beginning, and he still is in some capacity involved with the franchise to this day. He's not as deeply involved now, he's not providing character designs to the characters in the games anymore, but he does still, even for the latest releases in the Final Fantasy franchise, he does still actually design and produce their logos. So it does still have that bit of Amano stamped on the franchise to this day. And while there are Final Fantasy art books that are available that you can specifically pick up for Amano's artwork, so you can look at that, because who wouldn't want to, what I have here, just to talk about it for 2 seconds, is actually the Ultimania Archive, published by Dark Horse, which this is the first of, I believe, 3, which collects a lot of artwork and design and more information about the Final Fantasy games themselves. This first one collects material in regards to the first 6 games in the franchise, and it's a pretty interesting book because you get a look at a lot of Amano's artwork that he did for those first 6 games, and specifically at the character designs that he's done. And his very signature, very Western comic book inspired artwork has become such a huge part of the Final Fantasy franchise that even though he's not involved to the same degree now, it's impossible to ignore his influence and his involvement in the franchise as a whole. But as I had mentioned earlier in the video, his influence and his work expands also into the Western comics industry, where he has provided artwork for so many different projects. But a couple of the most well-known pieces that he's done, without a doubt, from Marvel Comics would be the Elektra and Wolverine The Redeemer. The Redeemer is actually a trilogy of graphic novels that were written by Greg Rucka. Rucka is, of course, a huge name in Western comics, having had a huge hand in the Batman comics, introducing the character of Batwoman. He's written a ton of work for Wolverine as well, on top of the miniseries that I'm talking about here. And this is just a small sample of what he's done. He's worked many different stories for Marvel and DC, as well as many creator-owned stories for independent publishers. And he, along with Amano, did publish this 3-issue graphic novel series about Elektra and Wolverine. And this is collected into paperback and hardcover edition, which I don't personally have in my collection. But if you are a fan of the writer or of Amano's artwork, and especially if you're a fan of the characters of Elektra and Wolverine, this is something you'd probably want to check out. It's something that I'm honestly surprised I don't physically own in my collection at this moment, so I'm probably going to track down a copy myself pretty soon. Another one of his very notable pieces in Western comics comes from Neil Gaiman's Sandman series, where on top of the main series, Neil Gaiman, along with various artists, produced many spin-off stories and miniseries, graphic novels, etc., that expanded the lore and the world of Sandman and the Endless that he had created. And one of those pieces was a novella titled The Dream Hunters, where Neil Gaiman was joined by Amano, who would produce pages of artwork. Basically, the way the story is set up is there's a page of prose and a page of artwork, and then towards the end there is actually a huge gatefold 4-panel image drawn by Amano, beautifully illustrated Sandman story. And this was later adapted into actually a graphic novel, a fully illustrated one by P. Craig Russell. But that Amano artwork is just stunning. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And that brings us also to Bleed Them Dry, of course, the comic series published by Vault recently, which has kind of inspired the subject of this video and inspired me to talk about Amano this day. The 6-issue series is written by Elliot Rahal with artwork by DK Ruan, so it doesn't actually have Amano's artwork within the book itself. However, Vault did hire Amano to create artwork for the cover of the book, as well as a few extra pieces that they've given me prints of. The story itself, created by Hiroshi Koizumi, takes place in a future world where vampires do exist, and they live kind of in harmony with humans who have come around to realize that, you know, there are good and bad vampires. However, recently there's someone who has been brutally murdering vampires, and it's up to a detective to figure out exactly what it is that's going on here. There's a lot of interesting things going on in that book. It is a fun read. I would recommend checking it out. It is referred to as a ninja vampire tale, and I feel like that's a really good descriptor. And if something like that, and it honestly gave me similar vibes to Blade Runner or Blade Runner 2049 in the style of the detective story and what's going on and kind of uncovering conspiracies and whatnot. So if any of that does sound interesting to you, then I would recommend checking out Bleed Them Dry from Vault Comics. But now let's go ahead and try out these bottles of sake, which they also sent to me, which are pretty interesting. Now, this point in the video, I'm gonna cut ahead, and usually I film everything same day and date, and I edit later, but in this case, because of outside circumstances, I had to film this part of the video much later than I actually filmed the sake trying part of the video. And so it's gonna be kind of weird because I'm gonna look physically different, like my hair is longer right now and all of that stuff. So there's a little bit of an inconsistency there. But let's go ahead and jump over to past Riley so he can tell us about those bottles of sake, and he'll try those out and talk about them. All right, so we're down here in my kitchen dining room area, and we're gonna go ahead and take a look at the bottles of sake themselves. So we have the black, and we also have the red. Each of these uses on the label the same image by Yoshitaka Amano, which is used on the cover for the Bleed Them Dry Collected Edition. Now, these bottles were imported to the US by a new company called Japanese Saké Sisters. And you can actually buy them in the US if you live in, or if you are visiting Dallas, Texas. You can actually buy these at Mitsuwa Japanese grocery store. So that is somewhere you can find these. Now, while the bottles were imported by a newer company, the sake itself was produced by one of Japan's most respected brewers of sake, the Asahara Brewery, who go back 140 years. It says on the back, brewed and bottled by Asahara Shuzo, Saitama, Japan. On the front, we have Ninja Vampire Black, Junmai Daiginjo, Asahara Brewery Company Limited, produce of Japan, illustrated by Yoshitaka Amano. And then on the bottle of red, Ninja Vampire Red, Junmai Daiginjo, and the same stuff. All right, so I've got the bottles open and I'm ready to serve. I used to have a sake like serving set years ago, like 10 years ago. But I've lost it somewhere along moving between different places. So all I have now are a couple of shot glasses that I can use to serve. Now I'm gonna have the black first. So I'm not much of a drinker. I do enjoy having, you know, a beer with my dinner every once in a while, but I don't do a lot of drinking. And I've had sake a few times. Like I said, I had the serving set. So I haven't had it that much that I can compare it to that many different types of drinks. But I know you're supposed to savor it and drink it like a wine, because it is a wine. It's very like sweet at the front of my mouth, the tip of my tongue, very sweet, and then it has more of a flavor that's reminiscent of like a white wine going towards the back of the tongue, and it's a little warm going down the throat. This is very, very enjoyable. It is not super strong as far as the flavor of the actual alcohol goes. It's not super strong, so it's an easy drink. I was a little warm right there. I felt a little bit of the warmth of that, which is really comforting. All right, so that one was good. Now let's try the red. So, doesn't really smell too different. This one is definitely a stronger flavor. It has a stronger, the alcohol is more present in this. It's not as sweet as the black is. It is more reminiscent of a wine than the black is, because the black has like at the front, it was super sweet, like almost like a Moscato or something, whereas the red winds up being more of like a white wine. There's a very distinct flavor to it as well that stands out. I definitely prefer the black over the red. They're both enjoyable, but the black is like super enjoyable. I feel like I could almost have it as like a dessert wine. These are both really enjoyable for me. It's the black. This is the star of the show. This one is fantastic. It has that sweetness right at the front, and then it's warm going down. Really great. I'm gonna drink this bottle, not anytime soon, but like I'm definitely gonna have a lot of fun drinking the rest of this bottle with my meals and stuff like that. The red I'm not as big of a fan of. It feels like it's more meant for a specific occasion is how it drinks to me. But both enjoyable. If you are a fan of sake, if you're a fan of Yoshitaka Amano, definitely try out these bottles. They are really cool, and I'm gonna keep them as well. Like, these are just really cool pieces. I'm gonna keep them in my library after I'm done. I'm gonna clean them out and display them on the shelves. All right, so thank you to Past Riley for that little sake taste testing, and now we're back in the present and wrapping this video up now. So this was really fun to make. I'm very thankful for the folks over there for sending me these bottles of sake. It was a very fun, very interesting gift to receive, and I'm hoping that anyone who has any interest in picking them up for themselves, whether it is just to have as collector's items or to try the drink itself, I'm hoping that you're able to get yourself some bottles. I hope that this was a fun video to watch. It was definitely a fun video for me to put together. I know it's a little bit different than most of the content that I put out, but it was something that was interesting to put together and put out there. But thank you so much for spending the time with me regardless, and you know, in talking about Amano and his work, because even though he's not a manga artist, he is someone who has such a heavy influence in that entire kind of field of work, and anyone who reads manga or watches anime or plays video games has undoubtedly been impacted by Amano's artwork in one way or another. So with all of that, again, thank you so much for spending time with me. Thank you for watching the video. If you've yet to have subscribed to this channel and you've enjoyed what I've done here, go ahead and press that subscribe button and hit the bell so that you are notified for every time I put out a new video. And with that, I will see you all on the next one. Peace out.